Welcome back to the deep dive. We're diving into those excerpts you flagged from Jo Owen's The Leadership Skills Handbook. Seems like you're ready to step up your leadership game, and this book, let me tell you, it's the perfect place to start.
It really is. Owen, he packs so much practical advice into this handbook. And what really struck me is how he emphasizes authenticity.
Mhm.
He really challenges that pressure to fit some predefined leadership mold.
So refreshing, right? It's like he's saying, just forget about being the perfect leader. Focus on becoming the best version of you as a leader.
Exactly. He uses this great analogy of top athletes. A weightlifter, for example, isn't going to suddenly become a synchronized swimmer.
Right.
It's about knowing your strengths and developing your skills in a focused way.
So let's dig into that. What does Owen see as the core skills needed to navigate today's crazy leadership landscape? He mentions mindset, adaptability, and he even talks about luck. Can you actually learn to be lucky?
It's a fascinating concept, and Owen really tackles it head on. He suggests that luck is often a matter of self-perception, how we choose to view those setbacks and successes. He encourages us to actively cultivate this lucky mindset.
So instead of thinking, oh, I'm just unlucky, it's more about asking, what can I learn from this? How can I turn this experience into an opportunity?
Exactly. He even suggests going back and reviewing past setbacks and successes and asking yourself, was I really unlucky or is it just how I'm choosing to see things? That shift in perspective, it can be really powerful.
That's a great takeaway for our listeners. Are you letting a bad luck mindset hold you back from reaching your full potential? Speaking of mindset, Owen has this whole section on strategically managing your career that really resonated with me.
Absolutely. He doesn't sugarcoat it either. He is very clear that you are in the driver's seat when it comes to your career. So if you're unhappy with your current role, your boss, or even the organization itself, he argues it's on you to make a change.
He really challenges you to take ownership. And it's easy to get comfortable to feel stuck, but he's saying you have choices, even if those choices are uncomfortable. It's a real call to action for anyone feeling stagnant in their career.
He's right. You always have choices. He even offers specific advice on finding the right role, the right employer, and this is key, the right boss.
He even gives tips on how to subtly influence the assignment process to increase your chances of landing that ideal manager, subtly flattering potential bosses, showing a genuine interest in their work.
It's fascinating. It's the strategic thinking that Owen encourages. And he also cautions against, sulking if you don't get your way. Not exactly a recipe for leadership success.
So true. Owen really emphasizes the long game. He talks about building your career like a marathon, not a sprint. It's about making those strategic choices that might not pay off immediately but will benefit you in the long run.
And a big part of that is constantly learning, adapting. The skills you need at one stage of your career won't necessarily be the same skills you need later on. He actually asks readers, what new skills have you developed in the last 3 years? What new skills will you need for the next stage of your career?
That's crucial now, especially with AI changing the landscape of work so rapidly. You can't just rest on your laurels. You need to constantly be evolving, acquiring those in-demand skills.
Absolutely. And he's very clear about the types of skills to focus on. He believes jobs that rely heavily on pattern recognition, like certain types of legal work or even medical diagnostics, are increasingly at risk of being automated.
So where does that leave us humans? What are we supposed to focus on if robots are coming for our jobs?
Owen argues that we need to double down on those uniquely human skills that AI can't replicate. Navigating complex emotions, understanding office politics, building relationships, those soft skills, they're crucial for effective leadership.
Interesting how those skills, which were once maybe considered nice to have, are now becoming absolutely essential.
For sure. And it's not just about having those skills. It's about understanding how to leverage them effectively at different stages of your leadership journey. Owen dedicates a whole section to understanding this journey and how the expectations of a leader change as you climb that corporate ladder.
And this is where he introduces this concept of altitude sickness. Could you elaborate on that a bit for our listeners?
Sure. Owen uses this term to describe how some leaders who thrive at one level struggle when they're promoted higher. They're great individual contributors, but maybe they haven't developed the skills needed to lead a team, manage a department.
So it's not enough to just be good at your job. You also need to be developing those leadership skills that'll help you succeed at the next level.
Precisely. He highlights how, at lower levels, the focus is on demonstrating hard work, proactivity, reliability, those individual contributor strengths. But as you move up, the emphasis shifts.
What does that shift look like?
It becomes less about your individual output and more about inspiring, motivating others, about strategic thinking, about building a vision for the team or department you lead.
This is gold for anyone listening who aspires to take on those more senior leadership roles. It's about being aware of those shifting expectations and preparing yourself accordingly.
And it's funny, those expectations at the top, they might not be what you'd expect. Owen's research found that while emerging leaders are assessed on their technical skills, senior leaders are often judged quite harshly on their ability to motivate.
That's so counterintuitive. You'd think motivating others would become even more important as you climb the ranks.
You would, wouldn't you? But Owen, he argues that senior leaders get so caught up in strategy, the big picture, they sometimes lose sight of their team's, day-to-day needs and aspirations. It's a good reminder that even at the highest levels, leadership, it's still about people.
It really is. And that leads us perfectly into what Owen calls people skills. A significant chunk of this book focuses on understanding yourself, understanding others, and navigating those sometimes tricky interpersonal dynamics.
And he gives you more than just vague advice. He offers tools you can use, like the style compass. It's a framework for quickly understanding someone's communication style. That way you can adapt your approach for more effective interactions.
I love that, like having a cheat sheet for better communication.
Yeah.
Owen gives examples of how to approach introverts versus extroverts, for example.
He does. When communicating with introverts, he suggests it's crucial to give them time to process information, formulate their thoughts. Don't expect them to just brainstorm on the fly. Extroverts, on the other hand, they often thrive in that kind of environment.
So it's about recognizing there's no one-size-fits-all approach to communication. You need to understand the individual, tailor your style accordingly.
Exactly. And it's not just about getting your message across. It's about building strong, productive relationships. Delegation, that's another area where he provides some great advice.
He's not just talking about delegating to get tasks off your plate, right?
Nope. He emphasizes delegating meaningful work. It's a way to help your team grow, develop new skills. Reminds me of that saying, give a man a fish, feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish, you feed him for a lifetime.
It's about empowering your team, not just lightening your workload. Now, on the topic of teams, Owen gets into the nuances of managing professionals. You know, those ambitious, high-achieving folks who can sometimes be, how should I put this, a bit more demanding.
That's one way to put it. You're right. He acknowledges that managing this group requires a different approach. Professionals, he says, they crave leadership, not just management. They want to be challenged, feel like their contributions matter, be a part of something bigger.
And that requires a leader who can inspire them, provide guidance without micromanaging, recognize their achievements. It's a delicate balance.
He suggests that often managing less is the most effective approach with this group. Trust them to rise to the occasion, give them autonomy to experiment, and focus on support and recognition rather than constant direction.
Makes sense. It's about creating that environment where they feel empowered to do their best work. He also talks about the importance of appreciation, even dedicates a whole section to flattery. Who knew that was a leadership skill?
It is. Owen reminds us that everyone, even those in senior positions, they want acknowledgement and appreciation. Feeling valued, respected, it goes a long way.
Not talking about empty flattery. It's about genuine appreciation for their contributions, the value they bring to the team.
Now, while mastering those everyday interactions is important, Owen doesn't shy away from those tougher moment of truth skills either. Conflict management, crisis management, the situations that really put your leadership to the test.
These are the situations where you earn your stripes as a leader, and it's great how he breaks them down into steps you can actually use. For conflict, he has this really simple but effective three-step process. Empathize, agree on the problem, resolve the way forward.
The ER method. So clever, easy to remember. And the focus on empathy is key because it sets the stage for a productive conversation.
Instead of jumping right into problem-solving mode, you start by listening, really trying to understand the other person's perspective. That can really diffuse a tense situation.
Absolutely. And he stresses focusing on the problem, not the person. Not about assigning blame, but about working together to find a solution that works for everyone.
He gives some great advice on how to disagree well, emphasizing respect for the other person's viewpoint, even if you don't agree with it.
Active listening, seeking to understand, finding ways to disagree constructively. That's crucial for building those strong, long-lasting relationships, even, when you don't see eye to eye.
And then there's crisis management. Owen has this line, you won't have time to prepare when the unexpected happens.
Chilling, right. It really underscores how important it is to have those systems in place. You might not be able to predict the crisis, but you can have strategies, processes for handling those unexpected situations.
He talks about having a clear decision-making process, a communication plan, a team that's ready to handle a crisis, being proactive, not just reacting.
And staying calm, focused, positive, even when it feels like everything's falling apart.
That's when your team needs you to be the steady one. Project confidence, provide reassurance, even if you don't feel it yourself.
And he doesn't just focus on the dramatic scenarios. He also offers tactical advice for handling those everyday challenging personalities, like workplace bullies, for example. He recommends what he calls assertive leadership,
Jesus.
being crystal clear about your needs, taking the time to understand the other person's perspective, and then working together to find a solution that works for both of you.
Standing your ground, but being respectful, solution-oriented. And sometimes that means saying no.
It does. He acknowledges that. He even offers advice on how to say no effectively, explain why something might not work, offer alternative solutions, be direct without being aggressive.
So much of leadership is about communication, isn't it?
Mhm.
Navigating all those interpersonal dynamics, whether it's managing conflict, dealing with a crisis, or just getting your point across.
Absolutely. And while we've been focusing on these people-centric skills, Owen doesn't forget about the more strategic, even political side of leadership. He has a whole section on how to effectively navigate those corporate waters, get things done.
Which can be a bit uncomfortable, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's tempting to think that the best ideas will win out, but the reality is it's often a lot more complicated than that.
It is. Owen gets that.
Mm.
He talks about understanding your organization's decision-making process, building a coalition of support for your ideas, aligning your goals with those of senior management.
So it's not enough to have a great idea. You need to know how to sell it, how to get support for it, make it happen within the existing structures.
Exactly. He also talks about building your personal brand within your organization. What are you known for? What's your area of expertise? Establishing yourself as a thought leader in your domain, it can give you more leverage to get your ideas heard, implemented.
Building that credibility and influence. Now, I know we've talked a lot about the softer side of leadership, but Owen doesn't shy away from the hard skills either, like financial management. I know that could be a stumbling block for a lot of people.
He does not. And he gets into the details. Budgeting, negotiating budgets, reviewing them, even outlines different cost-cutting strategies. He explains green dollars, for example.
I was hoping you'd bring that up. For our listeners, what are green dollars?
Basically, it's finding those real cost savings, but without sacrificing quality or performance, like trimming the fat, not cutting into muscle.
Being strategic with your spending. Finding ways to cut costs without impacting the value you're delivering.
Exactly. And Owen, he provides several approaches for finding those green dollars. He also gets into the why behind financial decisions. He talks about the balanced scorecard approach, for example.
I remember flagging that section. What's that approach all about?
It's about looking beyond just the financial bottom line. I mean, profit is important, sure, but the balanced scorecard says, let's also look at how we're doing in the market, how healthy our organizational culture is, are we investing in learning and development? It's a more holistic view of performance.
So instead of just focusing on this quarter's profit margin, you're considering the long-term health and sustainability of the organization.
Right. It's about a more balanced, you could say, sustainable path to success. Owen also gives some really practical advice on pitching ideas, specifically on creating that compelling investment case for your projects.
I think that's something a lot of people struggle with, getting buy-in for their ideas. What kind of advice does he give?
He stresses the importance of identifying and addressing the big assumptions. So, for example, what's the potential market size for this project? What are our assumptions about pricing? What about staffing costs? These factors really impact whether or not a project makes financial sense. Get those nailed down first.
So you're showing you've thought about the financial implications, not just the creative or strategic ones.
Yes. And he also talks about really understanding your business drivers. What are those key factors that have the biggest impact on your profitability? He uses the example of credit card companies. They analyze things very carefully. Things like the number of customers they have, how much those customers spend on average, what it costs to serve each customer, the interest rates they're charging.
So understanding which levers you can pull to influence those financial outcomes. And he keeps it practical, but he does touch on some of the more complex financial tools, like the capital asset pricing model, or CAPM.
Right. But what I appreciate is that he doesn't just present CAPM like it's some magic formula. He challenges the assumptions behind it, points out that some of those key variables are subjective. That means the model can give you a whole range of results.
So don't just blindly trust the output of a financial model, even if it seems sophisticated.
Exactly. Be a critical thinker. Understand those assumptions and be prepared to justify them. These models are tools to inform your decisions, not replacements for good judgment.
Be financially literate, even if you don't have an MBA. Owen also dives into the importance of vision and strategy. He talks about the power of creating a compelling vision of the future.
He gives a great framework for developing a vision it should be: relevant, understandable, stretching, simple, inspiring, and actionable. The Russia test for a vision. He gives the example of NASA's mission to put a man on the moon, a classic vision, something that captured the imagination and inspired action.
It's about painting that picture of the future that your team can get excited about, that motivates them to work together toward that common goal.
And he doesn't stop at the vision. He gets into strategy, too. He covers those classic frameworks like Porter's Five Forces, which analyzes the competitive dynamics of an industry. But then he explores more modern approaches like blue ocean strategy, finding those untapped markets where competition is less of a factor.
He seems to emphasize adaptability when it comes to strategy.
For sure. He talks about the lean startup methodology, rapid experimentation, constantly incorporating customer feedback. In our world today, where everything's constantly in flux, that ability to adapt is crucial.
And no conversation about strategy is complete without talking about marketing, right? Reaching your target audience.
Absolutely. He emphasizes truly understanding what your customers value, crafting that compelling brand message, appealing not just to logic, but also to emotion.
Connecting with people on that deeper level.
He also talks about pricing strategy, understanding the value you offer, finding that sweet spot, a price that customers feel good about, but that also allows your business to thrive.
He even gets into advertising.
Yeah.
Provides this really simple framework for a compelling message.
Yeah.
Focus on the key benefit, give people a reason to believe you, make sure your message has a unique personality.
Cut through all the noise, grab their attention.
This handbook is amazing. We've only scratched the surface. From those core communication skills to navigating finances, understanding your own leadership style, crafting a vision, it's a toolkit for success.
And Owen ties it all together so well. It's not just random tips. It's about understanding how these skills and concepts all connect, developing a real understanding of leadership in today's world.
And it's not a destination, it's a journey. It's about change, continuous learning, evolving as a leader.
I loved that message. Always more to learn, new skills to master, new approaches to try.
That's what makes it so exciting. So to our listener, as you reflect on this deep dive into Jo Owen's The Leadership Skills Handbook, what are your takeaways? What will you focus on first as you continue your own leadership journey? Let us know. Share your thoughts with us on social media using #TheDeepDive. And until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep leading with confidence.